Good morning and welcome back to Words with Walner. And I'm here today with, of course, Jon Walner, who is Chicago's leading personal injury lawyer. And we also have Andrew Stroth here today. He is our guest with Jon Walner, and we're really excited to learn more about civil rights law. And Andrew is a leading civil rights attorney here in the country. So let's start out with talking, you guys, how did you get to know each other and how were you introduced?
First of all, thank you, Andrew, for coming to sit down with us and talk about your practice of civil rights. I met Andrew at a lawyer's holiday party, and we got to talking. We had similar interests in the law and representing the underprivileged, underserved community. That Walner Law started very strongly in 1961, serving the black communities of Chicago and continued to do so and pour resources into the black community. And that's the core of our practice, is serving those who have no one to fight for them. No one has their back. They don't have the money or the resources to fight for themselves. And we are proud to represent them. But Andrew is passionate. He's a fighter. Getting to know him and going to lunch with him and dinner with him and getting to know each other and meeting his friends that are attorneys and his friends that fight for justice on behalf of his charities. And we've met each other's wives and families. But I've attended his charity functions where he represents the woman whose children were killed by the police violating their civil rights, killing them, violating their rights, taking away their rights and liberties, and decimated their communities.
So I'm excited to be here, John. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys inviting me to Words with Walner. I run a national civil rights law firm based in Chicago. I had the opportunity to meet John, and we just connected. I had always heard about Walner Law and his father, and I was really impressed with what I've seen in the community, because there's a lot of personal injury lawyers, and there's a lot of civil rights lawyers, but there's not a lot of lawyers who actually authentically and genuinely care about our communities. So John and I naturally connected, and we're working together. I want black and brown folks in Chicago and across the country to have access to the best and brightest lawyers, and that's why we're working together. And on top of that, John has supported the Truth, Hope, and Justice Initiative. Truth, Hope, and Justice Initiative is a national nonprofit representing over 1,000 mothers whose sons or daughters have been killed unjustifiably by the police, and sharing their stories and telling their human truth. So John and I have an alliance that's much more than lawyers trying to make money. It's about serving the community like his father did and like he is every day of every week.
Great. So Andrew, as president of Action Injury Law, why don't we just start out telling us what is civil rights law?
Well, so I'm the managing director of Action Injury Law Group, which is a national Chicago-based civil rights firm. We only do one thing. I spent 20 years representing NFL players, NBA players, television personalities. And 8 years ago, I was so taken by the unjustified shooting of black and brown people that I launched. On Monday, I was a sports attorney, and on Friday, I was a civil rights attorney. I launched Action Injury Law Group to do one thing: be a bridge between black communities and the best team of trial lawyers in America. So what's civil rights? I mean, it's violating people's constitutional rights. I'm also, and I know John is, pro-police. I support the police. I'm against police that violate people's constitutional rights. So civil rights is a broad area of the law. Our niche within civil rights is Section 1983 federal litigation, which is actions against the police for using unjustified, excessive, and in many cases, lethal force.
And how would you guys work together on a particular case?
Well, first of all, I trust Walner Law as the law firm to help people when they have personal injury cases. So that's what John is an expert in, personal injury cases. He also knows our firm as experts in the civil rights arena. So we can collaborate and serve the community by referring cases in those areas to each other because of our different expertise.
Can you share with us a case that you recently completed?
So we've resolved several cases. I recently settled a case against the city of Chicago where a young man was shot and killed by a Chicago police officer named Lowell Hauser. My client's name was Jose Nieves. I represented the family of Jose Nieves. He was shot at point blank range. We were successful working with Kim Fox, the state's attorney, at securing a second-degree murder conviction. Only the third time in 50 years there's been a murder conviction against a Chicago police officer. And then we advanced our civil case against the city and against the officer and secured a 7-figure settlement.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. How? Give me some other ideas of what maybe some other cases that have also that are on your plate right now, or even an idea of what's going on in the country right now. There's a lot of unrest, I think, and how are those type of things? Are they getting better?
Well, listen, we launched our firm long before George Floyd. George Floyd was a reckoning on social justice in America. And it only was because it was a perfect storm of everyone being at their home because of COVID and a video that showed an officer murdering a black man. I represent dozens of George Floyds. So I can't even talk about one case. Let's talk about Pierre Lorre, shot and killed by a Chicago police officer climbing a fence. Let's talk about Maurice Granton, shot and killed, both hands on a fence. Let's talk about Denigma Howard, thrown down the stairs at Marshall High School by an officer, charged with 2 felony assaults on a peace officer. We settled that case. Let's talk about Andy Finch, first swatting death in America, opened the door of his home in Wichita and was shot and killed by a Wichita police officer. Let's talk about Isaiah Lewis, 17-year-old unarmed black boy running away from the police, shot in the back. So I have cases and cases. Let's talk about 13-year-old boy, May 18th, running away from the Chicago police, hands up, shot in the back, paralyzed from the waist down. So everyone talks about George Floyd. There's hundreds of George Floyd. And the only difference is white America has seen on video what has been happening for years to black people in America.
So if someone feels like they might have a case, what is it that you're looking for? What are some of the first couple questions that you might ask somebody if they call you?
Well, first, listen, I appreciate being here today with Jon and Walner Words because we're both 2 lawyers committed to serving the public. When I look for a case, I look for strong objective video evidence. I look for injuries, whether it's a death or a major injury. You always have to understand the insurance, right? So if you're suing a city, they obviously have insurance, or if it's a private security company, So I look for objective evidence, I look for damages, and I look for clients who we want to help. I mean, Jon mentioned it. A lot of law firms talk about who's first chair trial lawyer, who's the second chair trial lawyer, who's the third chair trial lawyer. Action has one chair, and I know Jon feels the same way, and that's the chair that mom sits in. That's the chair that the client sits in. We serve at the pleasure of these mamas and these families who've been impacted, whether it's a personal injury case or a civil rights case.
So you each practice different types of law. Give me an example or something where you could learn from each other. If I could get, Jon, your opinion, or like what you would learn from Andrew and his practice, and then Andrew, if you could the same with Jon.
This is absolutely a man of passion and conviction, and every time we speak, I am turned on by his passion, empathy for those people who have been killed or severely injured by the police officers who violate their civil and constitutional rights. What really attracted me to Andrew is that, like me, he cares about the clients. I care about all my clients, their families. When I go to the client's home, I meet their family. We sit down. We don't talk about the case that they're a victim, that they're injured severely through the fault of others. We're sitting there, we're having coffee, we're eating, we're learning about each other, we're getting comfortable with who each other are. I'm seeing if they're on a 3rd floor apartment, if there's any food in the house, if there's any heat or air conditioning. You could really see the suffering that they're in or the joy that the family has together. You have to know your clients to get them the compensation that they deserve. You have to see if how they love and cherish each other or how they deal with each other, because each family is separate. Who is going to be a witness or a person that you want to advocate for your client, other than the client himself. The client does have a fractured femur. He was hit by a semi-truck. He had 3 operations and may lose his leg. But who's going to say, I live with him, I have to bathe him, I have to buy groceries for him, he's unable to move, so you have to meet the family. Like with Andrew, when we went to the Truth, Hope, and Justice fundraiser in the hotel on the roof deck there, Andrew went around not shaking. There was very important people, obviously, there, the head of the police department and a lot of politicians and wealthy philanthropists that are attracted to Andrew's message. But he introduced me to the mothers, the aunts, and they all, I don't know if you recall, they all wore shirts who they were. They had their messages on their shirts, pray for Johnny, or we miss you, we love you. And he went around the whole room and he knew everyone's name. He knew the aunties, the cousins. And I loved it because that's what I do. In my office, we have, our mission is to provide the most professional services to you. We're client-centric. But the first mission we have is we require of all our employees empathy. This is who we work for. These people have come to us. We are privileged to represent them. Empathy for their situation. Empathy that they don't have food stamps. Empathy that they're in Stroger Hospital for 2 weeks and no one has money to get gas to go visit them at Stroger Hospital. No one can stand up for themselves, and we come on their behalf. And I say, I've seen your problem. I know what's going on because I represented over 10,000 people. Right now, we have 2,000 active files. I've been in numerous hospital rooms every day of the week. I'm at Loyola or Stroger, Masonic, visiting with the families, getting them water, dabbing their lips with the sponge and the ice. They're suffering. I know what it's like to represent people who can't do anything for themselves. My dad had a horrible stroke 24 years ago. Can't move, can't speak. He's right-handed. The stroke was on the left side of his brain. Can't move his right hand, right leg. I know what it's like to transfer someone from a bed to a wheelchair, to the bathtub, to shower you down, to have his feeling of helplessness has helped me go into the hospitals where people are victims of horrible injuries, horrible surgeries, and they're just sitting in the hospital and they're like, God, what just happened to me? Who can help me? And I don't say, I'm going to get you $1 million. This is what I'm going to do for you. The defendant has so much money, we'll kill them. I'm like, I hold their hand. Like we've talked about before in Words with Walner, I hold their hand. I said, let's have the doctors, let's pray for the doctors. Because that's all we can do here is pray for the doctors to heal you. And we hold hands. I get them food. I show them, trust me, because I empathize with you. And if they sign with me, okay. But all you could do is empathize with them and meet their families and hear their stories. And that's what Andrew does. That's what I love about him and the Action Injury Law Board. Truth, hope, and justice. This is what's going on. This is the truth. Police officers, bad police officers, I am pro-police. Thank God we have the police to defend our homes and our families. But when you have a police officer, emotions, whatever, taking over and killing an unarmed person, and what is Andrew dealing with? He's dealing with the family, the mother. He sits in the living room and he goes to the funeral and he's surrounded by hundreds of people at the wake, in the funeral home, when they're having lunch after the funeral. All they're doing is surrounding Andrew and saying, help us. What can you do? What is going on? My family's been destroyed. Is there any way you can make it right and bring us justice? We think the same. This is why I get along with him so well, and my clients are blessed to be represented by him. What has happened since George Floyd? My office is ringing off the hook every day, people feeling that their civil rights have been violated, they've been injured as a fault through others, but it's not so simple. It's not that simple. You have to have certain actions taken under the title and color of authority of law under Section 1983, where their constitutional rights have been violated, but in a malicious, willful, and wanton way, absolutely stealing and crushing their rights. using the uniform of the police department. So what Andrew has taught me so much in my practice is they have to be so severely injured to win these cases. We have to have such objective evidence. We need videotape. We need direct witness testimony. We need significant help because most juries are on the side of police. It's the fact. They're keeping their community safe. They don't believe it. They don't trust that someone could be a bad apple like this. So we get so many calls. We want to give them all to Andrew Sturm. We want to give them all to the Action Digital Law Network to protect the rights, but a lot of cases are you have to turn down a lot of these cases because you just don't have the evidence. You don't have the injury. The families are passionate about hiring you. They're passionate about their problems. Please, Walner, this is a perfect case. But legally, you have to be very careful. You cannot, in this business, you have to also be mindful of expectations and tamper them down. So that's why we just give the calls right to Andrew. I listen, I go, Andrew, tell me about this matter. Will you please talk to this family? And he does. He picks up. He'll call anyone. We just had a recent matter in the state of Indiana where a security guard of a bar severely beat this guy with an injury of his life. But there was technical difficulties under the law, but Andrew talked to the family, he met with them, and he made it personal. And they could come back to us for other cases, and that's what we're all about. Let's see what we can do for your family, let's see what we can help, let's be empathetic, let's be accountable to you, let's bring truth to you. Got to be truthful and transparent with the client. You can't overpromise.
Andrew, how about you? What do you learn from a personal injury?
Well, I mean, I would just say I knew Jon's dad's reputation because not a lot of lawyers were truly committed to our community. And I've seen Jon firsthand, whether it's going to meet with clients or going to hospitals. I mean, to me, it's very personal for both Jon and I. So, and also what he says is also true. I'm always super honest with people because cases are very difficult, especially the civil rights cases. They're very difficult to win. They're very expensive to litigate, and people don't just write a check on a case. So, but how can it not be personal, right? I've attended more funerals in the past 7 years than I have in the past 50 years of my life because I care about those families. And it's not about getting them the money. It's about when a mother comes to me in distress, how can we help her get a plan to get some level of justice? So I'm grateful, like Jon is, that we serve these clients. And Jon has shown a real commitment to the Black community and the brown community, and that's my total focus is serving the Black and brown community. And Jon has been doing that, and his father's been doing that for decades.
Very good. So once you get a case and you start it, there's a long period of time. I mean, you have to gather evidence. It must be like, we're talking years, Andrew, for you, right? I mean, some of these cases could go on for a very long time.
Well, the first thing we do on our cases is like a lot of lawyers that I know, that we all know, go on TV. First thing they do is do a press conference. We're the opposite. We go to the streets. When the chief of police calls me and says, Andrew, where's the video from the incident? Listen, I don't own a gun, I don't have a badge, and I don't own any cameras. But because of our authentic relationship with the streets, we get that video from that grocery store. We get that video from that Harold's Chicken. We get that eyewitness cell phone. So our approach is always to get the evidence, because when the cameras go away, you have to fight in court, and we fight 90% in federal court. So our focus is doing an investigation. I also, when families call me, the first thing I do is pressure test what they're telling me with objective evidence. Because, again, as Jon mentioned, juries are very law enforcement friendly and favorable, and so you have to have strong evidence to win a case.
So we're looking at typically the average case lasts how long?
It depends. I mean, well, first of all, 86% of cases in federal court settle before a trial. But I have cases that have been pending for 5 years, 3 years. One case I have pending 6 years. I would say the normal time period for a civil rights case is 3 years.
Okay. Jon, how about you?
Every case is different. The bigger the defendant, the harder they make you work. The more complicated the injury, the longer the case goes on, because you have to have experts prove their disability, their inability to do something in life that they never were able to do again. The insurance company will always provide or bring us experts that say the opposite. The person can go back to work. The person's life, their injury is not permanent. They will get better. They will be able to work. And we have doctors that'll say They cannot work. Our doctors are treating our clients. That is their patient, and they, insurance companies, they have the right to do this. They hire experts that will go against us. That's what protracts a case. Also, fighting, like, for example, in a car accident, there's skid marks, there's glass broken, there's windows, there's what side the car ends up on, location after the accident, witnesses before the accident. You could download the computers off of each car to see what was happening right before the accident. So when you get technical, they'll go against you too. So no matter what accident reconstruction expert we have, they can find one that'll say an opposite. But when the sides agree, when it appears that we are right, when it appears our evidence is in line with the facts, then the case will settle rather fast, under 2 years. But you have to wait till the client's injuries resolve also. And it's also how much money the insurance has on the other side. Like if they only have $100,000 and a child that I just represented has 53 stitches in his face from a dog bite, and the homeowner says only $100,000, and people don't have a 401k and the asset stocks in their name or the access to, you just got to settle for $100,000, of course, with court approval from the judge. But depending on how much money the defendant has, also determines how fast the case will go.
So, John, most of your cases are dealing with people that have had accidents, and people have accidents every day, right? Now, Andrew, you're in a little bit different situation. I mean, we're talking about, we got a lot of violence on our streets. Do you mind talking a little bit about, like, why we have so much violence, in your opinion, and if you think things are getting better?
Well, I don't know if things are they're not getting better. Are they getting worse? I know there's more evidence because everybody has a cell phone. I think the best way to stop a bullet is a job. Best way to stop a bullet is education. Best way to stop violence is opportunities for jobs and careers. I mean, there's a big, black and brown communities in Chicago and in other major cities are disproportionately impacted by poverty, by low income. So, listen, if I didn't have the opportunities I had, I would do what I had to do on the street to survive. And so you have a lot of communities where gangs are controlling neighborhoods. I mean, I think we need to invest in our communities, especially our communities of color. I think as it relates to civil rights and violence with the police, I don't think much has changed. I think what has changed is everybody in America is a citizen journalist, and everyone has a cell phone, and that's capturing evidence, which has shown what's happening in our communities. I also think, again, I'm pro-police, but we have to vet and recruit the right police. We have to, when people say defund the police, that's such a misguided paradigm.
Yeah.
It should be invest in, support the police. I think we need to figure out how do we invest in police. And I also think you want to have relationships between the police and communities. The first time a black kid sees a cop shouldn't be when he's being arrested. Think about a fire truck driving by your house. Your kids are waving at the firemen. Think about a cop car driving by your house. Kids are scared of them. I mean, they're much deeper issues than we can talk about today as it relates to addressing violence in Chicago.
I really appreciate you coming in. This was a great discussion. I've learned a lot from you every time we talk, and it's wonderful to have you as a friend, as a colleague, and your professional assistance to all my clients, and I'm blessed to know you. Thank you for coming.
No, John, you're welcome. I'm grateful to be working with Jon and Walner Law, and I'm excited about what we're going to do together in the courtroom, in litigation, but more importantly, what we're going to do in the community.
Great. And before we go, I do want to find out how's the best way to get a hold of each of you. If somebody that's watching wants to get a hold of you, what's the
actioninjurylawgroup.com. actioninjurylawgroup.com. If they go on our website, they can contact us.
And John?
We're at walnerlaw.com, but 312-8-million is our phone number, and you can text it and call it or contact us through our website. And we appreciate hearing from the community, hearing what you thought about this podcast and what you think, what Andrew can do for your life and your family. So we appreciate Andrew coming in, and we're excited to move forward together.
Great. Well, we do really appreciate you guys joining us today. And Andrew, thank you for coming in and being our guest. We look forward to having more conversations. And I really, the audience at home, I really hope that you've learned something today. And until next time, we'll be in touch.